Hello, comrades. Today we will be reading The Voices of the Revolution by our comrade Johnny Torres. But before we do that, we'll start with the Second Rainbow Coalition, as we always do. I will screen share my screen right now. So there we go. Okay, can y'all see this? Oh, my screen is loading.
It's coming up.
Loading.
Okay, there we go.
All right, there we go. Can y'all see this?
Yep.
Right on. Okay, I'll begin reading the Statement of Duty and then we can continue reading. Preface. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to quote-unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions, and robbing them of their rights to self-determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, quote, "We have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism." The working people of the world, of every ethnicity or nationality, face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life: food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from the oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Duty for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways or on particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a quote-unquote race struggle. He said that's a class struggle, God damn it. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against this common class oppressor, against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14th, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for class struggle, is the model for the United Front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we established our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and class interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All members of the coalition, New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, Nassau, North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, and American Indian Movement Northeast Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And that is the Statement of Unity. And with that, we will now read Voices of the Revolution Anthology. Would anyone want to start us off? If no, then I'll start reading. All right, I'll start reading. Don't let justice die. Racist bastards search for a father and find him in Trump. So afraid of colored people, so they flaunt their guns, march with torches, commit violence, and truth they run. They hate the light and fight hard to try and block the sun. Meanwhile, black and brown struggle in a cold world, locked up in cages, even little boys and girls. Wrong color, go back home. How about we lock you up or kill you on live TV and still cover it up? As she covered him in dirt, she fell to her knees. A black person is murdered by police every week. Still no justice for Brianna as I'm not gonna say that word, protects his green and betrayed his own people because ain't no loyalty in greed. And the thieves of justice sit high and smile down, just saying they care. To keep the people's voices down, and as the people cry out, their hearts refuse to weep. They deploy more boys in blue, who replaced white sheets. Vincent Young, Sandra Bland, both hung in Texas jails. The system tells us they just up and kill themselves. White supremacists rule here, and their conviction is often fiction. Our blood drenches this land, so it's time to pay attention. To fight back, rise up, whatever tool we can use. By any means necessary, we must stop this abuse. We must refuse to be a tool of government atrocity. Just remember that silence means complicity. So reject mediocrity and don't let them lie. Speak up, fight back, because we can't let justice die. So reject mediocrity. Don't let them lie. Speak up, fight back, because we can't let justice die. So reject mediocrity. Don't let them lie. Speak up, fight back, because we can't let justice die. That's why I reject mediocrity and I don't let them lie. I speak up and I fight back for the sake of our lives. That was beautiful. That was fucking awesome. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Oh, Nikki Lulin?
Lulin, yeah.
Nikki Lulin. She's fucking awesome as hell.
Yeah. And once again, this speaks definitely true to the femicide against African women in our
Mm-hmm.
community and by the system, because African women are heavily discarded in our communities and by the system, especially with Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor is a special case because she is a fat African woman. So it's that fat phobia and the misogynoir on top of all of that, plus the class aspect of what happened to her and how people, treat her and ignore her, and like making, desensitizing memes about bringing her name to light on TikTok, that devilish app. Um, you know, it and Sandra Bland too, because she was actually killed before that mugshot of her in the concentration camp uniform. She was already dead when that photo was taken. So it's warfare against African women in our community and by this system, because we only see African women as cattle. And when we only see African women as and treat them as cattle, we ignore them by any means. Even when one African girl, African youth goes missing, we ignore it because we're just so used to violence like this. We're so used to it that we're so freaking desensitized and we just move on. And we have a few high profile cases of African women going missing here too, that is getting gotten little to no attention 5 years after. So, it's, definitely that aspect of tearing down the system that commits femicide against African women, that allows our community members to commit violence against African women and discards them, and we ignore them as if they've never existed or they've never, were never human to begin with. And Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland are definitely special cases for that, because once again, it's an all too familiar case in our community of African women being the most ignored, being the most discarded, being, treated like cattle 24/7, being seen as cattle, treated as cattle, and discarded as cattle. And, it's that thing that we definitely need to confront as a community as a whole, because it cannot just be African women leading the show. It needs to be everyone involved in this. Everyone that has been ignoring African women and have treated African women like they're cattle, like they're no one. This is a intercommunal effort, because, once again, femicide in our community is still happening. And it's important that we do the work, like actually do the work, to be able to bring African women to the forefront, to the light, to humanize them, to liberate them, especially them, because, it's an all too layered history of oppression against African women and other African people of marginalized gender experiences. So, definitely that aspect needs to be brought to the forefront.
1% agreed. 1% agreed. Especially because under this other colonial patriarchal system, and once again, it was talked about in our book club when we were reading the Young Lords of Radical History, of how under the of how under this patriarchal misogynistic society, colonized men, due to it being a patriarchy, um have um have um ha- um have misogynistic sentiments, but because they are colonized, their masculinity is always being trampled and um and undermined by society. But instead of taking it out on their oppressors, they take it out on their family. They take it out on the children and the women within their family to cause that internal conflict to keep the masses divided.
Exactly.
That, that's what they do. They they make colonized men have these misogynistic patriarchal sentiments and instilling in them this toxic masculine fucking identity while also constantly trampling on it and 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 making fun of it because they're colonized.
Right.
So so but but having that toxic masculine idea of them being the breadwinners, them being the quote unquote man of the house, they have to assert their toxic masculinity by
Capital.
abusing exactly by abusing their family,
Yep.
and this goes into it right here. Let's see what the other poem is. Echoes of Our Ancestors. Ooh, this is gonna be good. Would anyone else like to read this one?
I will do it.
Right on.
I'll do it. Echoes of our ancestors. The echoes of our ancestors in the sound of the drum and the smell of copal and the taste of tortillas, or even in the sight of my features, always calling me. It's as if my grandfathers and grandmothers were always guiding me through this colonized lifestyle, urging me back home, back to native culture, back to my indigenous roots. Growing up in a racist state like Texas, I found myself constantly being insulted, asked if I was legal, or even told to go back to your reservation at the public library by some gavacho in a suit, or being told by white or black teachers that we brown people, Mexicans, were less than they are. Yes, the racism was in fact that blatant. And this was the late 1990s in the fourth largest metropolitan city in the so-called free world, the US of A. But I knew better. I knew that I was trapped in a mega plantation, an industrial reservation where capitalism had dominance and Eurocentric ideology held everyone's mind captive. All I saw were malls and schools, jails and churches, highways or dead ends. But I knew in my spirit there had to be others like myself, those who remember and honor the ancestors, who still hold ceremonies in traditional ways, who even spoke original languages. So after I was tired of the street fights and racist field arguments, and after I had had enough of simply reading about civil rights movements and theories of spiritual nature, I finally decided to seek out the way of life I knew only in dreams. And that's how I came to East LA, where protests against police brutality and immigration reform were the norm, where the Mexica danza lived, and where Nahuatl was not a forgotten language. There in East Los, I joined the Peace and Dignity Journeys and ran with sacred staffs across inland California, meeting so many Chicanos and California natives with different points of view. There I met Cocopili, the ancient flute player of Petroglyph near Bliss, California, and learned my first native prayer songs. It was in California that I marched with the Brown Berets, the American Indian movement, and planted seeds with urban farmers. It wasn't long before this was my community and way of life. Only this wasn't home. I wasn't from California, but it was more than that. I found myself confronted by the same obstacles and a few new ones. I saw to pay rent and purchase most necessities like water, for instance. Racism was still an issue, and now there's discrimination from certain individuals or groups of brown brothers and sisters questioning my origin or intentions. Also, criticism of lack of native knowledge or, quote, revolutionary actions. But all that negativity only caused me to focus more on organizing, specifically in the anti-police brutality movement. And as my efforts towards uplifting my people wherever I went through, so did the criticism. However, I persisted in my grassroots activism. It may have been the climate march or perhaps the vigils for missing and murdered Indigenous women, or maybe it was my guest appearances on radio talk shows speaking on Native rights. But somehow I gained the attention of the organization. I was invited to join them in representing hashtag Indigenous peoples at the United Nations in NYC. So I accepted and flew to New York, where I joined South American and Iroquois elders alike in their 30-year-old org, which held economically and social consultative status for Indigenous peoples at the UN. It was here as special envoy that I was sent to Standing Rock to meet LaDonna Allard Brave Bull to convey the invitation for her to join the organization and speak at the General Assembly on behalf of Standing Rock, on behalf of the water. It was from here that I was able to meet the Mamo people, an ancient tribe of priests from South America. They are guardians of many pearls of wisdom as well as of water. And it was from here that I was able to reach many Indigenous peoples in resistance across the planet and grasp a broader perception of who the people are. The people don't live in cities where one has to pay for water with money earned by serving the colonizers. The people live with their ears on the bosom of the Earth Mother. The people don't theorize or live to consume. They are connected to reality and what is truly sacred. None of our philosophies or laws can hold a candle to the light that is the wisdom of the real people. For real people cherish this planet and revere the life-nurturing elements. And they do this in humility and not in an arrogant sense of superiority, holding their knowledge over others. Instead, they are generous with the traditional knowledge and want humanity to be enlightened. It is that humble and wise way of living that has taught me how to find my way back home by showing me genuine examples of the people. Olin King, Houston, Texas.
Beautiful.
Yes, indeed.
I fucking love this so much because it's true. Because a lot of people have this very idealistic, very individualistic way of thinking of the earth and of reality and our resources, that we are separate from them. But no, we are a part of existence. We are a part of the earth. We're not separate or above it, but we are connected with it. And just like how we can affect it, it can affect us.
Right. And even with the teachers, having racist, anti-Indigenous ideology against Chicanos or the so-called Mexicans.
Even the African teachers, like you
Yeah.
said there. And that right there, that's what they want. That hatred.
That divide. That divide. And it's like it's literally like a mental concentration camp. It's like a mental death camp where you're enslaved mentally and you only embrace the ideology of the common oppressor. So, I mean, it still happens today, clearly. So,
it happens today.
Part 2.
Sorry, what?
Definitely that part 2.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Would anyone like to read this? Finish your plate?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Right on, Shay. Go ahead.
Finish your plate. The monkey stay dancing on razor blades. Animals strike curious pulses and keep a bored fade. I hate to say it, at the time, it wasn't much to me. It's kind of sad that we call that their a victory. I need a plan B and some kind of contingency. I had to shoot him, Mama. It was him or me. Grandma used to tell us love stories, brown sugar. Grandma used to tell us love stories, brown sugar. You're everybody until somebody kills you. You're everybody else. The only dude to walk around in the yard son, son, you got shot to learn to play your cards. Son, you get your dots to learn to play your cards. Okay. You gotta read the signs, stay between the fine lines, recognize the truth. I raised you to be wise. I seen your name in lights, seen your name in dreams, visions of hard times, more problems with police. So run fast if you must, but baby, keep safe. And baby, before you leave, finish your plate. My grandma say, and my grandma says, and as my grandma says before you leave, ma, mijo, finish finish your plate. You're gonna need your strength. As Mr. Abuelita says, and as Mama says, before you leave, mijo, finish your plate. You're gonna need your strength. And Grandma will sing me a song. She sing, stand up and fly right. Stand up and get right. Stand up and fly right. Hold on, baby. Don't you blow your top. Team baby. That's good.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. I was grandma telling the grandson, man, the possibilities of him getting shot once he leaves the house. So,
Yep.
you get the strength. Because there's never a guarantee that we're gonna come back to the house. There's
And
no
there's him.
guarantees.
That's King
Yeah.
Baby right there. Fucking badass as hell. There is no guarantee. And that's really fucking scary as hell. It's scary to think about that. From art to revolution. Comrade Sean, would you like to read this one here?
I'm currently monitoring our pregnant dog. We've been checking her temperature multiple times a day because she's getting kind of close.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Take
Yeah.
care of that then. Don't worry, comrade.
Yeah,
I'll read.
well, it's not our dog, so we got to take especially good care because we're whelping it for somebody.
Right, makes
But it's a
sense.
barter situation, so it's all like comrade good.
Right on, right on. Don't worry about it.
Right
Don't
on.
worry. I'll read this one then. From art to revolution. Very important.
Chicago.
Chicago. My story begins in the 1980s in Chicago, to a family with a complicated history. My grandmother and her sisters were raised by nuns in an orphanage in Illinois during the 40s, when racism and abuse was openly practiced by the church. Ooh, Che, I think you've talked some experiences about the church in your past with the church and its racism. Uh, Her parents both died young, and so my grandmother and her aunts were sent to live with the nuns. Listening to stories from the living, sorry about that. Listening to stories from them, I experienced my first understanding of racism. While they were with the nuns, they they we disciplined harshly for speaking Spanish. The trauma of this is evident in my family and is the reason three generations of us do not speak or understand Spanish fluently. That's fucked up. When we move up to my mother's generation, my second lesson on systemic struggles begins, where gangs, drugs, and violence were normal ways of life. I would listen to stories from my tios and tiases that told of their beginnings in the gang life only to protect themselves from the white gangs that would attack them. It was through these struggles that the lives of many family members would be lost. These two lessons eventually guided me on the path to becoming a political activist. While growing up, the family moved around the city, living in Pilsen, Bridgeport, Belmont, Cragen, and at times staying with family in Little Village. Oh, Shanti, you talked about Little Village before. While living with my family, oh, sorry, what?
Yep.
Yep. While living with family in these areas, my uncles and cousins that were slightly older became my mentors. They taught me everything I needed to know about the streets and how to survive them. That taught me how to lead and not to be a follower, how to stand up for what I believe in, and to calculate every move so that I am always a few steps ahead of those against me. When I was 12, the man that raised me got me interested in learning about Chicago life and culture. He told me stories of being a brown beret back in his youth and got me interested in fighting for our rights. He taught me about the Zoot. He taught me about the Zoot Suit riots, the Chicano movement, about Emiliano Zapata and Pancho Villa. When I was about 15 years old, I learned about my biological father and our Puerto Rican heritage. I began to learn about the struggles of Puerto Rico and leaders that gave their freedom and lives for a dream of independence. I read as much as I could about I read as much as I could find on Pedro Albizu Campos, Lolita Lebron, Clemente Soto Velez, as well as my first exposure to the Young Lords. When I learned of the history of the Young Lords in Chicago, the Black Panthers, the Brown Berets, the American Indian Movement, and others that joined the Rainbow Coalition, I told myself that one day I would be involved. In 2016, in 2016, a few big events happened in my life. One one was that I began to get back into art, and I also went back to school my to earn my first degree. During this time, the political climate also became very intense with racism, police brutality, and anti-immigration being openly visible issues. Sorry about that. My art became more medium for protest, and with my love for history, each piece became a statement against the system. I blend art and history using images, statements, and poetry in each piece. I use my art to work with other organizations at the time to raise money for Puerto Rico during both the hurricane and earthquake disasters. I've created art pieces for the murdered, missing indigenous movements, and then donate proceeds to them after their sale. One of the biggest influences of my poetry was Martin Espada. I actually reached out to him to seek permission to use his poem "How We Could Have Lived or Died This Way" in a protest mask I created about police violence in the black and brown slash indigenous communities. My art led to the conversations with Chairman Subi. Oh, hell yeah. My art led to conversations with Chairman Subi of the New Era Young Lords. Fuck yeah. That's awesome as hell. Ooh. In the last year, I have been involved with several protests along with other organ organizations. I believe that's supposed to say organizations, but organizations against police brutality, including the death of Anthony Alvarez, who was murdered by police on March 31st, 2021. The young man's death happened on the same block that I had hung out with friends in the 90s, the same block where cops drew guns on me while walking with friends. It made me realize that at any moment I could have been him. And sadly, at any moment, killing like those of Anthony Alvarez or George Floyd can and will happen again. Another major protest that hit close to home for me that work with others fighting against the separation of migrants at the U.S. border. I have had to honor to stand. I have had the honor to stand with the many brave people fighting against Heartland Alliance and their detention of children for profit. We will continue to fight and speak out against this injustice until the children and their families are reunited and requiring the U.S. government provide emotional and financial support for the trauma these young babies endured at the hands of a heartless corporation and government agencies. Since the beginning of the Illinois chapter of since the beginning of the Illinois chapter, the organization has followed the path developed by the elders. We have been able to extend access to food to the community by working with many mutual aid programs. We have also partnered with organizations to offer clothing as well as other personal items to those in need. In the coming year, we plan to expand on our offer of medical assistance while working with clinics to donate time and resources for those that do not have health coverage. Besides the humanitarian aspect of operations, we continue to focus on education for the people in these communities, holding open circle talks on gun use within the community thanks to our partnership with Stick Talk. Our biggest success has been the ability to unite with organizations within the Black and Brown communities to build a strong foundation for a united front. Very important, a united front. My focus is to continue building on unity between our communities to stand as one people and to demand justice and change that we as a people deserve. We have begun partnerships with other organizations around self-defense, gun ownership, trauma/first aid training, and political education. Galante, all power to the people. Free them all. Hell yeah.
Oh God,
Papo,
Mireles.
Mireles,
Oh my
Deputy
God,
Chairman of New
Chairman
Era Young
Paul.
Lords, Illinois.
Chairman Paul. Oh my God, I knew this was Chairman Paul. I knew this was him. I was like, wait a minute, is this Paul? I was like, yeah, this is him. This is him. I knew. I knew immediately that this was him. He's the most coolest person ever. Um, he's very, very cool. And they do a lot of stuff. He does a lot of stuff. And he is currently at DePaul doing ethnic studies.
Ooh.
So like, it's like they are Paul is Chicano and Taino Boricua. And you know, he's a spiritual Taino. So a lot of those aspects are deep into the Chicago chapter's work, and Paul and I are very, 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 very close. Mind you, I just got with them literally 5 months ago, not knowing who the hell they were, not knowing who the Young Lords really were, not knowing who the New Era Young Lords were, and we just met that night at a political education meeting, and it was a done deal. Like we immediately became very, very close, and I knew more about the Puerto Rican liberation struggle and its history from that point on. And Paul and Char and Mo and Marlo and all those people, they very, very much cherish me. And I'm forever grateful to be close with Chairman Paul. And I literally just got the paperwork to, be part of the cadre program to eventually become an official young lord. So, definitely he's definitely a badass.
He
Definitely.
does. He sounds like a badass, and what he's saying is fucking spot on and correct. We have to make our culture political. We have to make our culture revolutionary by visualizing to the masses what revolution and liberation looks like through art, through poetry, through literature, through any means, through music, through any way that we can radicalize the masses and uproot bourgeois reactionary sentiments and thought and replace it with revolutionary and dialectical action. That's what we gotta do. And building that united front between different oppressed, colonized community is essential. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, to build a united front. with other organizations, with other communities to turn areas of division to areas of unity, into areas of solidarity with one another. And culture is very essential in that process. You cannot have you cannot have
Great.
unity without making culture political and revolutionary. You can't.
Exactly. And that's what they're setting out to do. We haven't had any political education classes for a few months, but they're planning on doing it soon again. And they're doing a lot of stuff with, I think, Urban Mirage, which is, a collective, for revolutionary self defense and gun safety. So, they're doing a lot of stuff. Marlo, who's the the minister for agriculture, is doing a lot of stuff with the community gardens too. So, they do a lot of stuff. And Char, who is the Minister of Defense, who I'm really, 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 really close to, um, opened up a botanical pop-up in a community space in Humble Park, I think 2 weeks ago now. And, once again, they do a lot of stuff. A lot of them do a lot of stuff. And uh definitely uh definitely some of the best people I've ever met, like the first true genuine revolutionaries I've ever met. And this was only just 5 months ago. So yeah, definitely grateful for them.
Oh hell yeah! I would love. I don't think I've talked to Chairman Paul yet, but I'd love to.
You should.
I, I
I'll put you on when we're done. I'll put
right
you on.
on, right on. I would love to talk to him. All right, Historia de un Soldado. Would anyone like to read this one? Shanti? Anyone? If no,
Huh?
that's okay. I'll read it.
You can read it.
Right on. All right, Historia de un Soldado. An interview with um Jeronimo Blanco Jr. Torres. We can begin by you stating your full name and how you became a brown beret that inspired you to do so. Blanco. Okay, well, my name is Jeronimo Blanco Jr. I was born in El Paso, Texas, of undocumented parents. When I was about a year old, the migra caught up with my parents and deported them, and they took us with them to a little hill town in Durango called El Sape. I lived there till I was about 6 years old. From there, we moved to Juarez, I believe how you pronounce it, to Juarez, right across from El Paso, Texas. I was about 13 years old when we moved to San Diego, California in around 1964, and I've been living here ever since. When I started going to school here in the States, I found out how racist gringos are. so when so so when I was in high school, I think in 11th grade, I could see discrimination coming from the gringos there and some teachers towards people of Chicano descent. The school that I went to was like 45% Chicano, 45% Anglo, and 10% mixed nationalities. And I knew that something had to be done, but I didn't know what. And I knew I must have committed, and I knew I must have committed to be then. But you know what? Then one day, these Chicanos from San Diego State University came to speak to us at the high school, and two were wearing brown berets. When I saw that, I said to myself, that's what's got to be done. And so before they got done speaking, one said there was going to be a meeting that Saturday in San Isidro. I think that's pronounced Isidro. California, which is right across the border from um, Tijuana, Mexico, Tijuana. And so that Saturday, I went to that meeting and was recruited right there and then. And I've been a Brown Beret ever since. This was back in 1968. And right away, I started preaching about the Brown Berets at the high school and the streets and wherever I would find myself. And we started wearing brown berets at the high school, and the administrators didn't like that and tried to put a stop to us from wearing them. So we told them no, we're not going to stop because there were gringo gangs that would wear their jackets with their logos and the name of their gang, and administrators wouldn't tell them anything. But the minute we started wearing the berets, they wanted us to stop. We said no. One day we were surrounded by administrators and told us to walk to the office. So we started walking to the office, but we kept going and walked out of the school. So we had the first walk out in San Diego County. I led it. Later, there were more walkouts in different high schools, but we were the first ones, and I am proud to have led it as a brown beret. Anyways, we had help from Chicanos from San Diego State University that came to back us up against the principal. And so they didn't do anything to us. We were expelled and couldn't stop us from wearing brown berets. That was on November 28th, 1968. I remember that day very well because November 20th is the anniversary of the Mexican Revolution. So we had our own Chicano Revolution here at the high school that I was going to. From there, we started organizing more and more. After our walkout, we had a sit-in to protest the racism coming from the administration. The principal at the time was very old and then left because of what we did. He got very tired also because he had a heart attack. They promoted the assistant principal, who was an even bigger racist. We put up a fight against him too. Then he was also removed, and they brought in another principal. As the school year progressed, we started becoming more and more involved in the community. I was from the San Isidro Brown Berets, and soon joined the bigger San Diego chapter of the Brown Berets. Sorry about that. On April 20th, 1970, we heard that there was a building going up in Logan Heights. Logan Heights is the biggest barrio in San Diego County. We saw the building going up and then found out there was to be a highway patrol station right in the heart of the biggest barrio in the county. Cop City right fucking there. We didn't like that. So we took over the land on where the patrol station was supposed to be installed and put a stop to it. And then we began construction of Chicano Park, which is now a symbol of Chicano pride and power known all over the world. It was us, the Brown Berets, that made it possible. I don't know if you've been to San Diego, but Chicano Park is very well known. Soon, muralists began painting murals on the pillars of the Coronado Bridge. Coronado Island is located by San Diego, and the bridge was built to join the mainland to the island. Pretty soon, muralists began painting the pillars under the bridge. A government agency was built in San Diego's biggest barrio, and it was staffed by Black people who couldn't speak Spanish and couldn't service our people. One day, we decided to take over the building. We got into the building at night, and when the staff began arriving in the morning, we told them they weren't working there anymore and to get out. We stayed in the building for weeks. After a while, I went to LA with a couple of other Brown Berets to bring a dentist and start a clinic. It was the first Chicano free clinic in San Diego County, and it's now the largest community-based clinic in San Diego County. And it was made possible through our actions, the Brown Berets. A couple of months later, a famous Chicano artist nicknamed Queso, his name is Salvador Torres from San Diego. He borrowed an empty building in Balboa Park. It is the biggest park in San Diego County. The city wanted to kick him out because he was making Chicano paintings. He called us the Brown Braves, so we went over to assist him. They did kick him out and gave us a big building and to turn it into a central cultural. It was now known as El Centro Cultural de la Raza. He now has murals all over the walls outside and inside. Then the Chicano moratorium came in August 29th, 1970, and a few Brown Braves went to support him. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the Chicano moratorium committee was started by Brown Berets in LA. On August 20th, 1970, the largest demonstration was started by Chicanos in the United States. There was like 30,000 Chicanos marching that day. When we got to Salazar Park, which is, the park you were at, the rally was barely starting when there was a big commotion. We saw all kinds of LAPD and sheriffs, and were beating up the Raza. I took part in the moratorium then and after the moratorium, which turned into violence. There was another one at January 31st, 1971, that also turned into violence because we were constantly being harassed and arrested under false charges by the police. We decided to move out of the barrios and start a 1,000-mile march from Calicico. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I don't know how do you pronounce that word. Calihico, California, to Sacramento. Sorry, what?
Calexico.
Calexico. From Calexico, California to Sacramento, the state capital. I took a little bad part in it. I didn't march all the way because I had other communities in my life. That part that I did participate in was during the march through the desert. During the day, it would get very hot, over 100 degrees, and at night it turned into sandstorms. In the morning after the sandstorm, I could see people digging out from under the sand because the sand covered up a part of the tent that everyone was sleeping in. But the march continued again. Sorry. But the march continued again. This was organized by the Brown Berets. When we got to Sacramento, there was a week-long series of demonstrations at the state capitol. After that, everybody went back home around August. No, I think it was October of 1971. This march from Calexico to Sacramento, we called it La Marcha de la Reconquista. After that march, we went to a nationwide tour. We called it La Caravana de la Reconquista. We went to California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, Chicago, Detroit, Ohio, and Milwaukee. I don't know how to pronounce that. Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Sorry, what?
Milwaukee.
There's a lot of raza, in these states and in the Midwest. We had a strong Brown Beret presence in those states as well. This caravana lasted a year. There are so many things that I could tell you about during the caravana that would take a long time for me to tell you. Torres, you can tell me some stories. Blanco, yeah, well, when we got started, we started out of Palm Springs, California, and the first stop was in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had no money. Whatever money we raised was from each town that we visited, and it was to get us to the next town. And so when we were in Phoenix, we were always being stopped by the police. They would run checks on our equipment, which they assumed was stolen. We had cameras and different things. They said they wanted to make sure there were no stolen For a whole week, we had nothing but hard bread and peanut butter there in Phoenix. Until once this Chicano restaurant owner invited us to eat at his restaurant. We ate there a couple of days, and from there, we went to Tucson, Arizona, where there is a park called Joaquin um, Murrieta Park. We heard that La Raza wanted to name it Parque de Joaquin Murrieta. So we went and camped out at this park, and we built a monument naming it Joaquin Murrieta. Now it's called Parque Joaquin Murrieta. For a long time, the city kept opposing the name, but the Raza stuck their guns, and the name remains. And that has to do with our being there and the building this little monument named Parque Joaquin Murrieta. We marched 17 miles from San Javier, a Catholic church, which was in a reservation outside of Tucson. Remember, I remember I got so many blisters on my feet that day. We had a medic that had served as a medic in Vietnam. We tended to our feet and so on. We would stay in each town for a week, and during the week, we'd organize. We'd spread out throughout the barrios and organize for the rally that coming weekend. And we had a couple of films that we would show at each rally and try to recruit raza from each barrio. In Tucson, we were joined by about 5 or 6 raza. From Tucson, we went to Douglas, Arizona, which is the border town to Aguas Prietas, Sonora. We were there another week. I remember celebrating Mexican Flag Day in Douglas, Arizona, which is on February 24th of the year. The Mexican flag, and we could fly the Mexican flag, and La Causa flag is about the same size as a Mexican flag with our La Causa logo on it. It's made with gold color, which stands for pride, that represents our people, our history, and our culture. And La Causa stands for the overall Chicano movement. From Douglas, we went to Silver City, New Mexico. As soon as we crossed into New Mexico, we stopped at a gas station and all kinds of border patrol and police and sheriffs were there. I think probably the people at the gas station called them. So La Migra, the sheriff, and I think even the state police were there. They started investigating us and investigate us. And of course, we were carrying bayonets on our side. And I think that the people at the gas station called to say that there was a bunch of Mexicans with weapons there. So they investigated us, but they had to let us go because we weren't doing anything against the law. Then we went to Lordsburg, New Mexico. That was the first town from Arizona. From there, we went to Silver City, and the police in Silver City were already waiting for us. They stopped right in the middle of downtown Silver City, and they investigated us, and they had to let us go. Whenever we could, we'd go to a Catholic church and ask the priest if we could stay there on the church grounds. He let us stay in the church hall. It was like a dinner or a dance hall. The next morning came up, and we started walking through Silver City organizing. After a few days, the priest threw us out of the church hall because he didn't want us to bring in his kitchen and his utensils, so he threw us out. From there, we split into squads. At the time, I was a captain in charge of one squad. I named my squad Nepomuceno Cortina, the
Yeah.
famous general from Texas, Mexico. There were a couple of little towns outside of Silver City. I went and camped out in a little town called Bayard. Another squad went to a little town called Central. We camped out on a hill called Chihuahua Hill. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Chihuahua.
Chihuahua. Oh yeah, Chihuahua Hill. I think it's called that because a lot of people from Chihuahua migrated there a long time ago. When we camped out in Bayard, I did some research on this place, on this piece of land that was there in the middle of a little town. And I found out that it was a city owned, and I said that if we take over a city property, they cannot arrest us. We were there for a week. At night, we could build a fire, and the fire department would come and tell us to put it out. We wouldn't put it out. So one time they came with a fire truck and they put the fire out. And when they called and when they were pulling it out, we started yelling, "Chicano power, Chicano power." The police got scared. I saw the cops shaking. Wait, let me see how far we're in with this one. Yeah, we're still good. The police got scared. I saw the cops shaking as if they were scared. After that, we went to Las Cruces, New Mexico, where we camped out there in a park again. There were a lot of bad feelings against the police because they had shot up a Chicano, killing him. I was interviewed by a local newspaper there, and I said the cops are professional gunslingers. That came out in the newspaper. We stayed there in Las Cruces for a week. Then we went to Tortugas, which is a small community of indigenous people near Las Cruces. Every year on December on December 12th, there's a hill called the a mountain. The Raza walked from a church to the top of the hill and back. I think it's the anniversary of the Virgin de Guadalupe. Yep, Guadalupe. The time when supposedly Juan Diego was visited by the Virgin and Tecnochislan. Tecnochislan. How do you pronounce that word again? Tecno. That's the capital. That's the capital of the Aztec Empire. I know that. Which was then Nueva España. From Tortugas, we went to Albuquerque. There we went to the headquarters of Reyes Lopez, Tijernia. It was already cold outside with snow on the ground. Way I look back and now when supposedly that period to unveil how they'll say they've lost the land or not. What was in their España and transformed from matter to us. We went to Albuquerque and the national curriculum. We went to the headquarters of land best to get in there, and it was already cold outside. What there was on the ground. David Sanchez saw a couple of people that he recognized. He knew that one of their brothers had firebombed his mother's house, and he confronted them. At the time, Lopez Tijerina, Tijerina was not in town. He was out on speaking. He was out on speaking tour or something like that. His right hand man threw us out of the building. I asked him, "Where can we go?" The guy took out a map and said, here's a church." So we went to a church, and yeah, they let us stay there. Let me see this. Could someone else continue reading? This was really fucking long. Does anyone else want? Does anyone else want to continue reading here?
Where's that? In Albuquerque?
Yeah. I'm getting a little bit tired. I'm reading all of it because it's really long.
Okay, I'll read it. In Albuquerque, we recruited a couple more Hassa. From there, we went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. We marched around Santa Fe with our bayonets. Santa Fe is the only city that I knew of that does not allow anyone to carry weapons, even if they are not concealed, and you're not allowed to march without a permit. One day, the cops surrounded us and took us all to jail for marching without a permit. At that time, we had a dog that ran around with us that had been donated to us by the Chicano from Silver City, who trained dogs for the army. We called the dog Lobo. He was part wolf, part German Shepherd. The soldado that was walking the dogs at the time got busted for walking a vicious dog. If you can believe it, if you can believe it, we were lucky that in the next county over there was okay, if you believe it. We were lucky that in the next county over there was a Chicano district attorney. His name is Tiny Martinez. He got some of the buddies to pull out collateral to bail us out of jail. And when we all got out of jail, it was a Christmas Eve. He took us all to the hills of Las Vegas, New Mexico. He took us to his place there in Las Vegas and fed us good. Then he got the principal of the high school to let us be in the gym. We stayed in the town for a week. We would march around and then organize a rally for the end of the week. From Las Vegas, New Mexico, we split up into squads again. That took me and my squads to this little town called Moha. Another squad went a little higher up the mountains to a place that we not even a small town. What? To a mountain to a place that was not even a small town, just a few houses called Elites. I stayed with my squad in Mora. We marched around there and the principal of the high school organized students to go out and march against us with the American flag. I found out about it because the chief of the police was a little old Chicano. He was so dumb that he told me, I don't know what to see. I don't want to see you guys marching these days because the students are going to march against you or such a date and such a time. So I took my squad and marched towards the high school, and the students were getting ready to move out to the march against us. We ended up counter marching against them. It was a beautiful afternoon that day, and I remember he was getting cold. One night it got to 35 degrees below zero. We stayed with the Chicano family. They had lined the bar. They weren't using anymore. They let us stay in the bar, and we were there, and we were able to get warm. And after a week and more, I took my squad to join the squad in Unix, where we stayed for a few, raise it up, okay, for a few more days. Then we went to Taos, New Mexico. There again, we would march around town, and we would march around at night. The police didn't want us marching, and one day surrounded us and told us not to be marching. We told them that we weren't. And it's a long chapter, but
This
violated
is a really long chapter.
that they had to let us go again. And the only funny thing is that they just asked him a question. He took this all over town. Again,
Exactly.
we stayed in town for a week where we organized a march and a rally. From Taos, we went to Chicago because it was hard to raise money in New Mexico. We were told that in Chicago we had a very strong brown beret presence there, and they would really help us out. We went and stayed in Chicago and stayed there for about 2 months. We stayed in the community center called Centro La Causa. There again, we organized a march and a rally for the end of our stay there. We then went to Milwaukee, where we had also had a very strong brown beret presence. We stayed in a community school. It had been a regular school for some time, but then La Casa turned that into a community school. We again would march around and organize a rally and march for the end of the stay there. And from there, we went to Detroit, where there were also a lot of La Casa. And again, we marched around and organized a rally for the end of the stay there. We recruited about 2 or 3 people from there in Detroit, and while in there, we visited East Chicago, Indiana, where we recruited a couple of girls. From Detroit, we would travel back to California. We went to LA, where we built a monument to honor the victims of the January 31st massacre by the LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department. They had killed 3 Chicanos that day and wounded about 31 on January 31st, 1971. We then went on to Santiago, and then we went to Central and North California, where again we stayed for 1 week in one town and organized a march and a rally for the end of the week. It was usually a week that we stayed in each town. In California, we went to Tejas, where we marched from Tortugas, New Mexico, to El Paso, Texas, where we marched to demonstrate against the MIGA, who were putting undocumented Hassas in the stage prison at La Tuna State Penitentiary. We held a demonstration outside the state penitentiary, and then we continued to march to El Paso. When we got to El Paso, a lot of Hassas were waiting for us already. They marched with us to the location of our rally. So we had our first rally in El Paso again. We stayed a week, and remember, push it up. Remember, Jesus.
This one is so long.
Yeah, man, it gets boring after a while, man.
It does a little bit.
Hey, the union, it's like reading a book. I forgot the name of the unit or we stayed in. I know he probably talks a lot, man, when in person. You know, oh God, I hate to talk to him. He talks too much. Oh, Jared. We organized our rally for the end of the week. About three or four Casas from El Paso joined us at the time. Then we went to Brownsville, Texas, where we again built a monument, one Napoleonico Cortina. Then we went to Houston. From there, but before leaving for Houston, some of their bound and they came to visit us and visit us to Houston. These were the ones who were once there when we were in San Antonio, where they wrote a letter to a prime minister of Carnavalismo of the Brown Berets. I've forgotten his name. They were asking for permission to join us in the primary national organization. We left San Antonio and we don't know what happened with that request. When we got to San Antonio, we were staying at the home of the Prime Minister of Colonialismo. We stayed there a week. We again organized a march and a rally and then moved on to Colorado. The first town was Trinidad, where we stayed at this old train station. Trinidad, Colorado is famous for being La Llorona town. It is said that La Llorona appears there. Oh, now it's getting spooky now. I remember one time you started to fall asleep and all of a sudden the girls came screaming out of the room. And our security asked them what happened. And then they said, well, we was cleaning the chairs and someone knocked on the door, on the window. So we got scared and so we ran. When our security looked outside the door, he said he said he saw a man walking by and then he looked out outside window. He saw our flash go by. Not a man, but a flash of light. Then again, we started around there for a week, and at the end of the week, we organized a march and a rally. Then from there, we went to Pueblo. I don't know if you heard about this, but in Pueblo, there have been this beer called Tree to Beer. Tree to Beer. It's three parts water, two parts beer, because they live in such a high altitude that if they were to drink regular beer, they get people really drunk. Again, we stayed in Puerto for a week, and at the end of the week, we had a march and a rally, and a couple of people from Pueblo joined us at the time. Somebody else, please. Oh, please.
I'll read it, Jay. Don't worry. I'll continue reading it. Damn, this is so long. God. Okay. Okay. After that, we went to Denver, and while there, we tried to meet with Corky Gonzalez, but he wouldn't meet with us. I believe it was because there were problems between the Brown Berets and the Crews for Justice, and so Corky didn't want to meet with us. We really wanted to meet with him and see if we could patch things up, but he didn't want to meet with us. We stayed a week in Denver. At the end of the week, we had our march and a rally. Then we went. Then we came back to California. On the way to California, David Sanchez pulled out his field desk and pulled out a map, and he said, "quote This here is Santa Catalina Island. Santa Catalina Island is right across the ocean from LA, and the other 7 or 8 islands off the coast of California were never part of the Treaty of Guadalupe, um, Hidalgo, because in Article 5 of the treaty, it states the new boundaries, and it says up to the Pacific Ocean. In other words, at that time, California was claiming 13 nautical miles into the territory. I think now they're claiming 12 miles, maybe more. I am not sure, but even if it were more than 12 miles, Santa Catalina Island is 26 miles into the ocean. Anyway, the United States just settled them. On August 30th, 1972, we came to Catalina Island to occupy it. Some came by plane, the kind that land underwater, and some came by tourist boats, the ones that bring tourists to the island. The next morning, we all walked up this hill where we had already scoped out the place where we wanted to take over. It overlooks the city of Avalon on Catalina Island. We occupied with this piece of land where we put up a giant flag there, the Mexican flag, which would be seen for miles around. Pretty soon the sheriffs came by and we told them the island was part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And they left us alone, and we were there for 26 days. The gringos from the island got their high-powered rifles out, and they wanted to go shoot us out of the island. We had blockaded the roads that led to our camp. It is a narrow road that is a narrow road, and they had to go back down the hill in reverse. I mean it. It was a miracle that none of them went off the cliff. One time they put some brownies in the locker of this one Mexican man that was living on the island that had a note that said it was for the Mexicans up on the hill. He brought us the brownies, and it turned out that they were tainted with something because we all got diarrhea. There was an attempt on us by racist gringos from the island. There was a time we rented a house there, which served as a safe house for us. This brown beret went undercover and, and rented the house for us. My wife was the only female there at the island. Damn.
God, that's a book.
This is a whole book. There's a whole book.
It seems like that's the end of the book, man. That's the end. That's the end. We coming to the end of our meeting.
This is so long. Oh my god. Okay.
We could break it up in half.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I mean, the thing is, the schedule here says we have to read from pages 144 so we have to read from pages 144 to 174, and we're on what page are we on? We're on page 166.
Oh,
That's the schedule. God, this is so long. I don't even remember what he was even talking about when this whole thing started. I don't even remember what he was talking about. Oh my god.
they
Okay.
asked him a question. They asked him how did he get involved with the Brown Berets,
And now we're here. And now we're here.
We've been at it, man, for about an hour.
Oh my god. We went to a house to shower and rest. A couple of hours later, we saw these two Brown Berets walking by and they turned the corner. We found out that they turned the corner instead of stopping at the house because the police were following them. What happened is that while me and my wife was the house, those Brown Berets had gone out scouting for another location to move our camp to. The cops moved in on us. The mayor of the island supposedly went to the regulations and supposedly found out that the piece of land we were camping at was designated to be a multi-family building. They never did build there, and it was still the same empty piece of land. So the cops escorted the Brown Berets to a boat and made sure that they got in it. My wife and I stayed, and the other two Brown Berets stayed as well. We were there for about another month, and it was hard to eat. We had no food. We had a roof over our head, and we were grateful for that. We had no money, and the Rasa from the island were afraid to help us out. After another month, we went back to LA, and at the time, things were bad within the organization. There were some Brown Berets, there were some Brown Beret officers that were conspiring to take over the organization and get rid of David Sanchez and so on. They passed out flyers in LA saying that while on the island, when the cops went to throw us out, they didn't let the soldados defend themselves against the cops. But we're at our weakest moment. Our supplies were really low for about the last week. We were eating a can of corn and green beans wherever we could find that was there. A world with no money, a world with no more money and no more food. So I think David Sanchez made the right decision to leave the island and not risk getting arrested. We had a lawyer. Oh my god. We had Jesus fuck. We had a
I know
lawyer.
one thing, the next time I see his name somewhere, I'm running.
Oh God, there's a whole story. There's a whole book. There's a whole book. This is a goddamn. Capital by Marx is not as long as this. Oh my God.
Make it simple. Keep it simple, man. Sure.
Wait, so we had a lawyer that was supposed to represent us in case we get arrested, but our strategy was to get arrested for trespassing and nothing else. But the lawyer had backed down, so we had no lawyer and no money to hire a new one. And so rather than risk, Soldados getting arrested, I think he made the right decision to leave the island, and we could always return at a later date. Those officers that were conspiring against David Sanchez claimed that it was their idea to occupy the island and that David had jumped the gun and beat them to it. But if that was the case, why didn't they go retake the island? I think they were being inspired by some undercover agents within the organization. One day he decided to resign from his post as prime minister of the Brown Berets and disband the organization because one of the things those officers wanted to do was to turn us into a communist organization. We wanted to be nationalists. I think by being nationalists, that gave us more strength and more power rather than being communists. Given the circumstances, that was the right decision to make. The other Brown Berets officers claimed that they were going to continue with the organization. Well, if they were going to continue, why did it die down? Like I said, it was conspiracy inspired by the undercover cops within the organization. It wasn't the first time there were threats by cops. In San Diego, we had a police officer infiltrate us, and he arrested 2 or 3 Brown Berets. One went to prison for 10 years, and two got probation and fines, and so on. LA, of course, was the focal point of the infiltration by police agencies. We went underground by by being disbanded and didn't mean that we had forgotten about the Brown Berets. It meant that we were going to come back later. In the 90s, we came back full force and we were building up units in California, Arizona, and several states. We've been back ever since. About 6 or 7 years ago, David Sanchez was accused of sexually harassing one of our commander's daughters, and he was stripped of his beret. If there is a major insult, it is for a beret to have his beret taken away. The same night, Jesus fuck, fine. Oh God damn. The same night, I received a phone call asking me if I wanted to take his place. I said yes because I didn't want the organization to go on without a leader. I became national commander of the Brown Beret National Organization. About 4 years ago, we had a conference in Tucson, and at the time, the officer I had named in charge of arts and culture for the organization, she had a bunch of kids under her, as Brown Berets, a lot of underage kids, 13, 14, and she convinced them all to vote for me to retire from the organization. And so, of course, because she'd gotten them to vote for me to retire, that's what they voted for. But I didn't retire, and I continue on. I disbanded the Tuscan Brown Berets, and I terminated her completely. Being national officers, you are supposed to be loyal to your commanders, and she was not loyal to me. I continue as the national commander, and that's why I am to this day. And that's the history of my involvement in the Brown Berets. I'm sure I can say a lot more things about the Brown Berets, but that's about 5 years. Please don't say more. Oh my God. Do you have any more questions? Yes, I do. Thank you. The first question: what was the name of your high school? Mar Vista. Mar Vista High School. Mar Vista in Imperial Beach, California. Who were the people that were trying to take over the clinic that you made for free to the people? The people that were trying to get it. The names? No, not the names. You mentioned the gringos or those who are trying to get the building and make it into something else. No, no, not the free clinic, but the highway patrol station. They were they were people, because they couldn't speak the language. They were New African agents. Yes, the neighborhood house association. Okay, okay. Do you have any like revolutionary heroes that inspired you to do the things you did? For example, um people like Cesar Chavez or Emiliano Zapata. Was there anybody you looked up to? Pancho Villa is my hero. That's good to know. Okay, wait, what page are we on? Okay. Okay. And that's good to know. What would you like to put as a title for the story? It's up to you because a lot of people have been like doing well. Brown Beret origin story of Johnny Torres. That's what I did for my story. Do you know what? Do you want it to be different? Do you want it to be something like Brown Beret origin story? Did you have a nickname, or did they call you Blanco? They call me Blanco, but if you do want a title for my story, maybe you can title it Historia de un Soldado. That's good. We can use that. The picture I want to use for your story is that one you have on your Facebook profile. That one where you're wearing your uniform and have your fist in the air. Uh-huh. I would like to use that one. Yeah, yeah, go ahead. I like that one. Wait, let me see. Wait, let me see. Okay, we're almost done. Only 4 pages left. Only 4 pages left. Come on. I thought you would say yes to that. Blanco. Oh, by the way, the pictures were. Oh, by the way, that picture was taken during a week long tour that we had with the Tijerina in northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. That picture was taken in Las Vegas. New Mexico about 7 or 8 years ago or something like that. We had a week tour of speaking engagements. We were his bodyguards. Where he went, we would go to protect him. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, you sell a lot. I mean, a lot of people haven't given me that much. Not a lot of brown berets give us as much. Everything you shared with us is everything you shared with us is very good. I'm glad that you shared the story. Has there been anyone else who has tried to interview you? Yeah, there was a reporter from the LA Times, and I didn't get the message on time. I think she wanted to cover the anniversary of Santa Catalina Island takeover last August. I opened my phone and there was this message. I had it for a couple of weeks. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I didn't get it before. So I'm the first to get your story. That's interesting. Good to know. Well, the book will likely be out in March. I'll let you know when it debuts. Send me a copy. Oh, I will. I'll send you one on the house. All right. Yeah, because
That's what
you
we
gave
just
us.
read.
Or what?
That was that's just what we just read, the book.
Yep, that's what we just read. Yeah, because you give us a lot of good information that most people don't know about. Oh yeah, a couple of more questions. Were you when the reporter Ruben Salazar was murdered? Can you talk about that? About what happened on the day briefly? Blanco. God. Well, like I said, this was in August of 1970. On that day, we had the largest demonstration by Raza in the history of the United States. About 30,000 marched to protest the Vietnam War and the high number of Chicanos getting killed in Vietnam. Also against the educational system and the overall system of government that has always suppressed us. Ruben Salazar was there, a reporter for the LA Times. He would write things against the police, against the LAPD and the sheriff's office. One of the things I remember he wrote was, if anyone can put up a fight against the police, it's the vatos locos, the homeless. We called them vatos locos at that time. The vatos locos were the only ones that put up a fight against the racist police. And so he was sort of writing things about the police. That's why the police had it out for him. They followed him to Silver Dollar Bar. That's where he was sitting down on a bar stool, and the cops outside of the door shot tear gas projectile. It was right through his head, killing him instantly. There was a plan to silence him, and it worked. It was good for the cops, but it was bad for La Raza. It was good for the cops. That cop killed him. That's basically why I knew about Ruben Salazar. I heard there was like two brown berets that got hurt or or killed that day. Yeah, Lynn Ward, half Chicano, half Mexican, and the other one I forgot his name. On January 31st, 1971, when the second riot broke down, Felix Gadena, who was a brown beret, got shot 3 times. He was walking with his hands up in the air. He got shot 3 times by the cops. The cops were like maybe 40 feet away from us, from the Raza, when they started shooting at us wildly. You could hear gunshots going pop, 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 pop. That time 31 people got shot and one or two were killed. One guy was a Hungarian immigrant who escaped Hungary because he was politically involved against the government. He came and got killed in the United States, but it, yeah, can you guys hear me? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I need to do something real quick. Can one of you guys continue reading it?
Okay, where?
All right, sorry about that. I'm back. Shit, where was I? That time 31 got shot and one or two were killed. One guy was a Hungarian immigrant. Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know about that. Well, thanks for telling me all this and giving me the time to interview you, because this is going to make a revolutionary history right here. All right, I believe it, and I know that everyone I know that everyone else is going to agree too. They're going to be shocked and amazed that that this this is what happened, and they're going to be happy to know more about the struggle. People are going to want to be a part of this as well. It's going to open a lot of eyes, is what I'm saying. That's what I wish to achieve with this book. And I feel like you just put the missing piece into the book now. I believe it's going to be amazing. This is what everyone's going to know us for, what the Brown Berets stand for, and what we continue to do. We're retired or active or not, we are a part of something. We did something that's what matters. Yeah, we sure did. Torres. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for all you did and everything because that meant a lot. You're welcome. Well, I just want to, okay. There are not a lot of people who would have done what you have done. You realized what was right for the people and you did it without anybody's permission and because you knew it was right thing to do. Yeah, yes. And we did what we needed to be done. That's good. I'll call you back when I get a chance. I'd like to tell you more about the book, okay? Sounds good. Your name's Johnny Torres, right? Yeah, Johnny Torres. I'll save your name and number too. Okay, well, thank you very much. Viva la causa. All right. La, que viva. Whew. God, that was a lot. That was a lot.
Yay.
Was,
Okay.
God, that was so much.
I know, but it needs to be told.
It does. It does. It does. It was just so long. I did not expect it to be so long, but it needs to be talked about. It does, and it was very important. I really liked it.
Yep.
So, Comrade Che, do you have anything to add to what we just read, Comrade Che? Anything to add?
Well, first of all, it was too long, but it was good.
It was good.
You know, he talked about the various struggles that they raised in various towns that they went. You know, which was good. But they have a habit of marching around, doing a march on that day before the day is completed. They do a march. You know, and you know he did a lot, man. He did a lot. I must say he did a lot. He did a lot of work, you know, and the Brown Berets did as well. No, that's it.
Oh shit! I was muted. um, Comrade Che, there's something that he said that kind of caught me off guard. I want your opinion on it. He said that he didn't want the Brown Berets to become communists and instead for them to be national because he thought that them being national was better or something along those lines. I found that part
That being a
interesting.
national as opposed to being a communist.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand that because
I don't
I
understand
mean,
that either.
you know, I mean, what does it mean by being a national? You know, I mean, when we talk about communism, we know what that means. You know,
Exactly. Well,
but
communism is liberation. That's what it is. It's liberation.
well, I personally don't think, you know, that a lot of, well, not a lot, I'll say some, brown berets haven't got yet to the level of communism.
Agreed.
Of communism. They still on the national scale, dealing
Exactly.
with a lot of nationalist tendencies and a lot of nationalist culture, which is okay. It's part of the development, you know. but they're not communists. They haven't reached the level of communists. And I think that's what he talked about.
Gotcha. The way that I see it is, once again, nationalism is not inherently wrong. It's nationalism and communist movements aren't inherently opposed to one another. It just depends on where's the nationalism coming from? Is it coming from the colonized, or is it coming from the colonizer? And whether or not it's revolutionary or not
Exactly.
is what matters. Not only that, but another thing that I've talked about many times before is that the whole point of communism is to help other international communist movements. That's the whole point. The whole point of communism is that it's an international movement. So nationalism, revolutionary nationalism, is good, but as long as it doesn't, as long as it isn't, as long as it doesn't replace the intercommunal and international front.
Right.
Because once again, the whole point of communism is that the whole point of communism is internationalism, to help other oppressed, exploited, colonized groups across the world. And if you're only a national organization, they only care about the liberation of your nation.
Right. And not only that, you know, we have to keep in mind that this was Blanco's time. So,
Yep, that was his time.
You know, it's natural for a lot of people in his day to have that, you know, that mindset of like, you know, not being communist and being, you know, nationalist instead. You know, it just comes with it. So, you know, we have to keep that in mind, you know, tidbits of info that we definitely do need because, you know, this is our history. This is Brown Beret's history. So, you know, we cannot erase it just because of
course,
you know, because of what Blanco thought at the time, what may have been suitable for the Brown Berets at the time. You know, this was the 70s. So, you know, a lot of people, you know, around him, you know, they had, you know, similar sentiments too. So, you know, it's kind of like keeping that, you know, in mind because it just wasn't in that you know, that communist structure. It was just not, they felt like it was not in the frame, it was not in the frame of mind to really stick at the time. So, you know, it's those things that I think a lot of us don't really keep in mind is that, you know, we're looking into the perspective of their day, you know, like the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, you know, what their mindset and beliefs were at that time. You know, it doesn't, you know, connect well with today, but you know, once again, this is history. This was their time. This was their day. And so, you know, like, you know, I expected it. I expected it because that was what they thought. That's what
I
a lot
expected
of
it too.
thought.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's about building on what flaws they have because once again, it's certain tidbits and certain strategies that we do need. And keeping in mind that this was their day. This was their day back then. So building on, you know, whatever they got wrong and correcting them to be able to move forward. And a lot of us don't do that well enough or don't do it at all because it's just like we keep seeing these people as like celebrities or something, which we cannot do because you're going to be disappointed. But it's about building on what flawed sentiment and strategies they had and making it better for the people today. I mean, that's literally the entire point.
That's the entire point, right? Um, it's a very important that we acknowledge that during that time, communism was still seen in a negative light, especially due to McCarthyism and the Cold War. Later on, organizations like the Black Panthers went from being went from being revolutionary nationalists into intercommunalists, which is a very important step. But at the time, this is where they were at psychologically, ideologically, culturally, and so on and so forth. So, but thankfully things have changed, and the Brown Berets have obviously improved from those who came before. And communism is and having the ideological and political
now more
correct
pure.
line, and having that Marxist dialectical scientific analysis and the principles of scientific socialism is more accepted now among
Right.
the Brown Berets.
It's more clearer now.
It's more clear. Their ideological and political line has improved, and they've upheld the revolutionary proletarian line.
Yeah, and there's actually a good book on this that I sent in the chats a few days ago. Chicano Power and the Struggle for Aslan, which is by a study group in the concentration camps, a Marxist Leninist Maoist Chicano study group in the concentration camps, and they go deeply in that. It goes deeply in that, the history of the settler state of Mexico, the Marxist perspective of the struggle for Aslan and for Chicano liberation. And I think that's very, very crucial, a very, very crucial text to have, because we're getting it from the perspective of the lumpens in the concentration camps. Not only that,
Mhm.
but also getting a deep history into the Chicano struggle and the suppression against Chicano people, against Chicano natives, like Mestizaje, Latinidad, the creation of the Mexican United States, those things. So definitely recommend that book, because it goes on par with what we're talking about here. The understanding of where their minds were at the times, and applying a dialectical piece on it.
Exactly, yeah. Having a scientific analysis on where they were back then and improving on where they were, learning from them, seeing what worked, what didn't, what's applicable, what's not applicable, what they got right, what they got wrong, and how to learn from their mistakes while also while trying to apply while trying to apply what they got right to our to our to our unique and ever-changing material conditions of today, and to improve our tactics and our praxis. Honestly, one of the books that we should definitely read first is definitely a history of the Chicago Young Lords. That's something that I would love to get into.
We're literally getting that underway. So don't worry, it's getting underway, because I really want our history to be told. I really want our history to be told and to be given the light, because we are the most demonized city. And so, because we have a lot of unique revolutionary and cultural history. And so, definitely adding the Chicago aspect to it, because this is the city of the lumpen in this empire. So, it's definitely important that we get our shining light and get our just dues, because if it wasn't for Chicago, there would be no kind of class solidarity in the modern context without the Rainbow Coalition, without the Young Boys, without Fred Hampton, without Bobby Lee, without Hyde Thurman, without Choctaw, without those people. There would not be that foundation of class solidarity in the way that the Rainbow Coalition did 50 years ago. So we have a lot to give, and they owe us a lot of flowers, because if it wasn't for us, we would not have created that foundation of class unity, of class solidarity between different oppressed and colonized peoples in the lumpen proletariat circuit, to really push forward the resistance against capitalist imperialism, especially within this empire. So, there's a lot of flowers that we deserve.
Right on. Well, with what other comrades have said before, I don't want this to tag out too long, to for our viewers. So, does anyone have anything else to say? Are we ready? No?
No, I think we pretty much said what we needed to say.
Right on. If that's the case, I hope you all have an amazing revolutionary day. Thank you everyone for coming here. Thank our viewers for whoever may be watching this. And all power to the people. All power to the people. Our revolutionary love and power. Have an amazing day, y'all. Bye.
Thank you. Much love.
Much love.